Hello everyone, so excited to say happy Friday. Thanks for tuning in to Within the Frame, where we delve deeper into the top stories not only in South Korea but across the globe. I'm Kim Bo-kyung. These days, it's hard to find empty seats in theaters, with the Avatar sequel drawing millions of people to explore the water life together, and the first slam dunk soaking audiences in nostalgia. Not just films though, dramas on over-the-top services too. The Glory, for instance, have got a lot of us binge-watching. For an in-depth analysis of why such movies and dramas are attracting so many people's attention and how the content industry might continue to flourish in COVID's endemic phase, we invite Jason Bechervaise, film critic and visiting professor at Korea University, into the studio. Jason, welcome to the show.
Hello, it's great to be here.
All right. And we also have film critic Conran on the line for us from Goyang City in South Korea. Piers, welcome and thank you so much for your time.
Thanks very much for having me, and sorry I couldn't be in the studio today.
It's okay, maybe next time. Now, Jason, first question to you. The film version of the popular basketball manga series Slam Dunk has already attracted 2 million moviegoers in South Korea. But what was the original manga series like? How popular was it? And what significance does this movie have?
Yeah, no, the original manga series is very popular here in Korea. I've got friends who were visibly very excited to see the film. And, many of these are now, men in their 30s and 40s. And, in the 90s, Japanese popular culture was incredibly popular, not just in Korea, but, across the world. And this original series certainly resonated with readers, and, there were films. And I think with the film coming out, decades later, I think there was a lot of interest in the series, and that certainly was evident in on social media platforms. Right. And as someone who's not, when the film came out, I'm not familiar particularly with the original manga, but I was like, what is this film? And because I could see that, men in their 30s and 40s were incredibly keen to see it. And, even after just a few days on release, people had seen it twice. They watched the subtitled version, the dub version. And, it's a very well put together film, beautifully crafted. And in terms of, the structure, it works quite well, because at the center of the film, we have this, this basketball game, but we're also introduced to the characters. And so I think for fans of the original manga series, there's a lot to kind of take away from the film, but also those who are less familiar. And I think that's one of the reasons why the film has been so popular, because yes, it really attracts that kind of key demographic for this particular film, but also it's kind of spilled out into, other demographics as well, younger audiences, older audiences, and also male and female.
Right. Now, Jason pointed out that the film had been popular to other demographics as well, but Piers, the movie has been actually especially popular among those in their 30s and 40s. According to the data provided by movie theater chain CGV from January 4th to 29th, 8 out of 10 moviegoers were people in that age group. Now, why is that so?
Well, I mean, Jason has already spoken to that. Clearly, there's a huge nostalgia element at play here. The audience who are watching the film are the people who were reading the manga when it was current. Anecdotally as well, you have these people who are very excited about it. They're bringing their friends in, and who, as Jason's already said, people who didn't necessarily know about it before. As an example, my wife, who's in that age group, hadn't read the manga, but her friend, who was a fan, dragged her to the cinema, and they both really loved it. So the nostalgia element is really important here. People who have this really fond memories of the manga. And nostalgia has often proven to be a very powerful, motivating factor to drive audiences into cinemas. We've seen it before here in Korea quite a bit, particularly with youth films that are set in kind of recent historical times. So I'm thinking about films like Architecture 101 or Sunny, or if we even look at dramas, we have all the Reply series, which kind of fed into that same kind of nostalgia. But with this, it's a little bit different, because it's nostalgia for IP that was really popular for people when they were younger, and that's something that we've seen really be successful in America, I suppose. Whenever Star Wars is rebooted, or last year Top Gun being a great example of that as well. Bringing in new fans as well. We're seeing that doing very well here, even though Top Gun wasn't necessarily that well known before. And it's great to see an slightly older audience, getting to the cinema, getting excited to go to the cinema. And this is an audience that takes their time when a film is kind of building word of mouth. So the films kind of stick around longer, and that's kind of, there's more engagement and play there. So, they have busy lives. They can't go to the cinema straight away. So it's good to see that. So a few other films have been doing well like that over a sustained period at the box office. Locally, we had Decision to Leave last year, or the musicals Life is Beautiful and Hero.
Right, interesting. So the nostalgia was the key point that drew those in 30s and 40s to the theaters. Now, Jason, the film's popularity has given some of the spotlight to the original comic series. I mean, it has been seeing a huge resurgence in sales in South Korea, and it is expected to reach 1 million copies sold. Why so much attention for the comic series?
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't surprise me at all. I think, if you're a fan of the original series, or if, let's say you're a new fan, you've watched the movie, and let's be honest, the film is terrific. And so, yeah, I think clearly there's going to be a lot of individuals out there who want to get that, physical copy of something. And we've seen that with films recently, and not just films, dramas as well, where publishers have done pretty well, selling these so-called kind of script books, Decision to Leave, for example, or Our Beloved Summer, Take Care of My Cat. And I think there's certainly a trend here, when a film, it might not necessarily sell, millions of tickets, but a film that has an enthusiastic fan base and it's been playing for a long time, because that's what films are doing now. They're playing for longer, maybe opening softer. And I think publishers are, have certainly found a way to, publish these books that are selling pretty well, and in a tough environment. I think that says quite a bit.
Right, interesting. Now, Piers, let's talk about another film that is attracting many fans right now. That is documenting BTS's free concert titled Yet to Come in Busan, which was released on Wednesday, actually. According to Korean Film Council, at one point it was ranked #1 with more than 21% of the total reservation rate. And experts say it's quite rare that a film documenting a concert is this popular. Well, why is it so popular? Is it just because of the BTS's popularity?
Oh, sure. I mean, I think we have to acknowledge, BTS is an absolute global phenomenon. Their extreme popularity is going to bring fans to anything that they lend their names to. And this is not the first time they've had a popular concert film. I think it's their 6th film already. The first one was Burn the Stage in 2018. And 5 of those have been in theaters, including the latest one. And last year they had one that debuted on Disney Plus called Permission to Dance on Stage LA. So, and also, Blackpink also had a very popular streaming concert film as well. So, these films are driven by, the fierce and documented loyalty of the BTS army. And they open quite strongly, then tend to burn out quite quickly. So they're a very kind of brief event picture. They make the most of their money in the opening couple of days. Regarding this most recent one, it's a bit too early to say how it's going to do internationally. I'm not sure what the figures are there. But certainly here in Korea, I'm not sure it's done quite as well as their previous films. And this might be just tied to the general problems of the Korean theatrical market at the moment. But the strong pre-sales, they always have very strong pre-sales and then burn out quickly. And I think it's gotten off to a slightly slow start. It had 20,000 viewers on its opening day. Some of their previous ones opened with 100,000 viewers and have gone on to have over 300,000 admissions. I think this one is going to have a bit of its work cut out for it. I think it's going to get to 100,000. But this is not a knock on BTS at all. It's just the market's a bit different right now.
Right, I see. Now, Jason, we cannot leave out the sequel to James Cameron's 2009 sci-fi flick Avatar, which was 3rd on the list of the highest grossing movies released in South Korean theaters. What were its unique characteristics that lured viewers?
Yeah, never underestimate James Cameron. As people are realizing yet again, they seem to do it with every film he releases, you know, with Titanic performing spectacularly and
Right.
Avatar as well. I mean, James Cameron, he understands his audience extremely well.
Wow.
You know, his films don't necessarily attract, you know, critical praise in the same way that, you know, other auteurs do, you know, the Quentin Tarantinos or the Christopher Nolans. But yeah, you know, he really understands his audience. He's a great technician. You know, he knows how to pioneer technology and utilize it in a way that really challenges conventions. And we've seen that with the, you know, the first Avatar film. You go back, you know, looking at his earlier films, you know, Terminator 2, for example. And with this new film, it just looks incredible. I mean, as someone who's been watching the Marvel films and somewhat feeling a little bit of fatigue now, you know, with a lot of the CGI, and that's not, of course, Avatar has a lot of CGI, but I think he does it in a way that is revolutionary, and I think audiences respond to that in an age where, you know, streaming has really kind of garnered a lot of momentum and kind of putting people out of the cinema. And this is the kind of film that audiences want to be in the theater. They want to embrace, you know, these technological, you know, equipped theaters. You see it with 4DX, ScreenX, you know, IMAX, Dolby, and these are the premium formats that have done really well, you know, through the release of Avatar. And I think he's someone who, understands the technology. He knows how to tell a story, and you bring that together, and you have a very, very successful film.
Right. Now, Piers, before we move on to the content on streaming services, actually, many Korean movies that were expected to lure many moviegoers during the Seollal Lunar New Year holiday weren't as popular compared to other foreign movies that we have been talking until now. But any specific reason behind that?
Well, that's a question that I think a lot of people in the industry are going to be asking themselves at the moment, because certainly with this year's Lunar New Year films, expectations were, you know, cautious but fairly high for both The Point Men, Im Seon-rae's The Point Men, and director Lee Hae-young's Phantom. They were both, you know, ambitious, big-budget, star-driven films cut in genres that have done well before in the market, but they have definitely underperformed significantly, particularly in the case of Phantom, which now is, you know, it's just over 500,000 admissions, and it's, you know, it's going to be finished quite soon, and it would have needed about 3.5 million to break even. Now, why is this happening? Of course, some of this we have to attribute to being still a hangover from COVID and the glut of streaming content, both of which are factors that have impacted viewing habits quite significantly. I would say also that the massive rise in ticket prices during the pandemic, there was a 12-month period where the ticket prices went up 3 times, effectively increasing the price of the cinema ticket about 25 to 30%. And that was certainly a shock, particularly with all the inflation we've been seeing and, you know, fears of a coming recession. So it takes a lot to convince people to go to the cinema these days. And, you know, a film like Avatar, as Jason has already said, you know, did that. Top Gun did that last year as well. And locally, you know, proven properties do that as well. So sequels do okay. Last year's most successful Korean film was The Roundup, the sequel to The Outlaws. We had the prequel to Roaring Currents, Hansan, The Rise of the Dragon, and also a Confidential Assignment 2 doing very well. But, you know, then beyond these legitimate causes, I think there's also the reality that a lot of these major recent Korean films haven't really been connecting with viewers. In the case of Phantom, a film that I thought was very good and I enjoyed it a lot, it's a colonial era film about independence fighters. That's a genre that does really well normally. But this one was, you know, less blatantly patriotic. And unfortunately, there was also a clear block of male viewers who were not, didn't take very kindly to the strong themes of female solidarity. But that's kind of another issue. But it's, you know, taken all together, it's pretty concerning, and we're all kind of wondering when the ship will be righted, and when people really start going back to original Korean content again in cinemas.
Right, so high ticket prices and lack of connection the movies were able to make with the audiences were the reasons, I guess. Now, moving on to Korean-made content trending on Netflix, Piers, sci-fi thriller Jeongyi topped the global top 10 most popular films for Netflix's non-English chart. That's just 3 days after its release on January 20th. Now, how did you enjoy it?
Well, personally speaking, I'm afraid to say that I was not a fan at all. I've enjoyed Yoon Sang-ho's work in the past. I liked his most recent Netflix TV series Hellbound. But if I'm going to be quite blunt, I thought that Jung-hee was horrendous, and I'm sad to say that. It did open strongly initially. And this is, it's part of kind of this wave of Korean content being very visible and kind of like visually appealing and genre forward that international viewers really like. So we have, this genre content kind of tends to over-index on Netflix. So we've had, this is due to the success of previous shows like Kingdom and especially Squid Game. And both of these were built on the success of the, previous hits in the cinema like Train to Busan, the big zombie hit, and that of course was also by the same director. So this gets viewers excited, and it builds some goodwill. And so when something like Jung-hee comes along, it's a visually appealing, high concept sci-fi show from Yoon Sang-ho, the director of Train to Busan. Sure, that'll get people interested, and that viewers' goodwill got people to tune in when it opened for the first few days, and it did top the chart of the non-English chart for the week when it opened. But the reactions, both here and overseas, were pretty negative. It just dropped like a stone. Within a few days, it had dropped out of the top 10 in most major markets, and now it's kind of a blip. And in this case, unfortunately, I understand why. It's not a very good film. I hope that we don't see too many of these, because Netflix has kind of been, there have been kind of complaints around the world, grumbles of Netflix not making always the best films. And if we see too many films like this in the Korean market, will people kind of go, oh, actually, maybe, new Korean thing, I should be careful. But we'll see. Hopefully it's just this is just a minor blip, and we'll get back to another good film next time.
Right, so it was a strong, nice start, but it went quite disappointing as it went by. Now, Jason, another Netflix hit series was The Glory, right? A suspense drama penned by renowned Korean screenwriter Kim Eun-suk. And what aspect of this revenge drama has been luring viewers to binge watch it? And also, as far as I know, we don't often see those kind of dramas released in, divided in two parts of series, right? Was there any specific reason behind this?
Yeah, well, Netflix have done it with Money Heist as well. They kind of, released it in kind of two different blocks. I do agree with Pierce, by the way, on Jung-hee. Terrible film. But yeah, The Glory is a really good series, at least so far. I think, the revenge-driven narrative, you've got this school teacher who, she's been bullied horrendously at school, and she's plotting her revenge. These revenge-themed content has long been popular. Just go back to the films. Old Boy, even Kim Ki-young, back in the day would deal with revenge. And I think with Glory, I think it's one of those series where it's very difficult to turn it off. You watch one episode and then it's a binge series, so to speak, and that's the kind of content that's done so well on Netflix. Stranger Things, Kingdom, and of course Squid Game. And I think this series is quite interesting because it kind of brings together some of the characteristics you see in TV dramas as well. The social class,
right.
The rich and versus the poor, and so in that sense, I think it's kind of learning. The creators here seem to be learning from the writers and the producers and directors in the TV sector, and kind of vice versa. So you have this kind of interesting hybrid. I think that's one of the reasons it's done so well, because it does have some of these kind of features that you associate with Korean dramas, but also with so many directors kind of migrating over to these streaming platforms. They're kind of bringing their tropes as well, and what we're seeing is as these kind of industries kind of come together in some way, we're seeing some interesting content resulting as a result of that. And I think this series is characteristic of that.
Yes, I can't wait to see the season 2 that is going to come out in March.
Yep.
Now, Piers, it has already been a long time since K-dramas and movies have been reaching viewers around the world thanks to streaming platforms like Netflix. But what would you attribute the success of K-dramas to? And how do you think the content industry is going to unfold as the endemic phase comes to our lives?
Well, I think Jason kind of already hit the nail on the head because you have Korea's been really great at making these, whether it's revenge dramas and whatnot, stories that creates kind of natural social parables that have been very exciting for international viewers. You look at Squid Game, you look at Parasites. These are just very engaging, easily accessible. Stories about a social divide, a divide in society, backed up with very interesting, high concepts. And so these social narratives have done really well, and people like that. But Korea has a lot of other things to offer. You have all these big stars that are really popular, like Song Joong-ki, for example. Reborn Rich was a massive success recently, as was Vincenzo. And so but you also have there's a mix of these kind of genre shows and also the more warm-hearted Korean dramas that do really well. Recently, Extraordinary Attorney Woo. He's kind of these earnest, heartfelt stories that we see less of in Western media. And Korean content has been really good at doing that. So, over time, you have a number of items that just do really, really well and that develop all this goodwill. And so then, people are willing to take a chance. And as long as everything that comes out isn't like Jung-hee, people will keep coming in to watch Korean content.
All right.
I'll stop bagging on Jung-hee now.
All right, it was great and exciting to talk about these movies and dramas, but unfortunately, this is all the time we have for today. But thank you, Jason and Piers, for your wonderful insights today. We really appreciate them.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
All right, that's all for Within the Frame tonight. Hope our viewers enjoy a great Friday and weekend. We will be back next Monday with more in-depth stories on the issues happening in South Korea and, of course, around the globe. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.